Howdy folks, welcome to FoundFlix. On this Ending Explained, we're looking at Terrified, following strange events occurring in a neighborhood in Buenos Aires, bringing a trio of paranormal experts to investigate what's going on, leading to some shocking and terrifying results. Appropriate? Terrified is just straight up a badass horror movie, actually delivering on plenty of scares and suspense, and is perfect for anyone looking for an under-the-radar but still excellent flick to get in that Halloween spirit. It was a Shudder exclusive at first, but now you can rent it on Prime or even get it on Blu-ray for pretty cheap. Yes, you will have to read subtitles. Deal with it. It also is a bit complex story-wise and jumps around in time on occasion, which can get confusing, along with how it develops its story being quite subtle, making it easy to miss the full picture of what's going on. That's why we're here today, to help you fully understand everything revealed over the course of the movie, and just what the malevolent presence in the neighborhood is. So let's dive into the world of Terrified, breaking down the story, the mythology behind the evil, and explaining the ending that leaves things in quite a cliffhanger. A woman, Clara, does the dishes, focusing in on the drain. As water pours down, we hear pipes clatter. The water appears to get stuck as her husband Juan comes home with good news. The dog they hit isn't dead after all. Well, hooray for that, I suppose. She says she couldn't cook because she kept hearing voices in the kitchen, and shows him the gurgling drain. He doesn't believe her, blaming it on old pipes, and there's that neighbor that's always doing remodeling, making all kinds of crazy noises. She croaks that they were human voices, and he asks what they said. Frighteningly, "They're going to kill me," she replies. The next morning, she goes to take a shower, Juan awoken by some loud thuds. Cursing the noises, thinking the neighbor responsible, he bangs on the wall, yelling it's too early to fix things, but the noises don't stop. Now even more annoyed, he goes next door, buzzing on the doorbell, and threatens to call the police unless he shuts up. Back home, the noises start up again, realizing it must not be Walter, and calls out to Clara to no response. He enters the bathroom, finding the walls covered in blood, Clara levitating in the air and being smashed back and forth violently against the walls. He frantically tries to grab her to stop, but she keeps smashing her head. Seemingly unable to do anything, he falls to his knees and screams. Looks like we got some kind of malevolent entity of some kind on our hands here, folks. We then jump to him meeting a trio of paranormal experts who have experienced similar cases to his, showing him pictures from 1998 that occurred in the US of the exact same thing, almost identical to Clara's fate, in fact. Was it solved? He asks hopefully. Rosenstock, changing the subject, wants to know of anything out of the ordinary that's been happening in the past few weeks. He recalls an accident that happened outside of the house, and his neighbor Walter was very upset, and since then has been remodeling his home at all kinds of odd times of day. They actually know the man, as we jump backwards a bit in time to learn his story. Walter has already been having supernatural issues for months that have gotten worse recently, and is attempting to get a hold of Dr. Albrecht, the woman seen with Juan later, but her assistant is unwilling to hear his story or help, telling him to call back tomorrow, and hangs up. Geez, thanks lady. He peeks under the bed before stepping out and takes some pills, splashing water on his face, noticing the water gurgling and pipes clattering just as at Juan's house, and does his best to get settled in bed, appearing quite restless. Probably doesn't help that his bed starts to move by himself and the lights blink. Walter's shooting up to attention as the bed keeps creeping along the floor. He checks underneath it again, seeing nothing. Then when tilting back, a ghastly white leg flops out. The lights go out completely, and he tries to fiddle with it, seeing something behind him that scurries away. Hiding under the sheets, he starts to pray, hearing footsteps in the room. A hand reaches over him, and we move on to the next day. Finding his room in shambles with stuff strewn all over the place, the chairs stacked on top of each other. Dang evil creatures always trying to do home decorating. The problem is they stink at it. Look at this mess. So now we've seen this thing in the flesh. It's some kind of creature rather than a spirit. And after this revelation, Walter again fruitlessly tries to get a hold of Albrecht, but the assistant still maintains that she won't be able to take his case. Desperate, he says he'll pay anything, feeling that he's going crazy. But it comes down to that she doesn't want to take cases without proof, and Walter's gears start spinning about how to do so. He sets up a camera to hopefully capture proof, setting it at the foot of the bed and waiting. The lights go out, startled away awake by clattering, and notices the camera has been knocked to the floor, spotting an odd human-like shadow on the wall. He plugs the lamp back in and it's gone, or perhaps not quite, hearing more creaking. He grabs the camera and sees a figure standing there while he was sleeping, and then enters the closet, where it probably still is. Yikes! He fearfully turns to it and backs out of the room, grabbing a gun first, good thinking, and he yanks the closet door open, only his clothes seen inside. He rechecks the footage and watches the creature climb out from under his bed. The door is starting to open ominously behind him. He sees its shadow in the gun and goes for it, but the monster beats him to it. As a small boy outside of Walter's retrieves his soccer ball, stopping for some water at the faucet, Walter warns him not to drink the water and to stay away from the house. The kid backs up into the street and is promptly hit by a bus, which must be the accident that Juan referred to in the interview with the trio. Juan is busy fixing a giant crack that has mysteriously appeared in the wall, and runs out to find the boy lying motionless in the street, and the bus driver just bails. Wow, okay. He calls out to Alicia, another neighbor, and the boy's mother. They are seen attending his funeral, Clara offering whatever help they can, while Juan is still drawn to Walter's house, seeming concerned, wondering just what is going on inside the walls. This provides us with the context of the evil that has begun to plague the neighborhood, spreading from house to house, bringing us back to almost the present, first meeting Jano and learning how he got involved in the case via a late-night call from his old friend, Captain Funes. He mentions the child's accident being 4 days ago and asks for his help, believing that he's the only one that can figure out what's going on. Before they arrive, Alicia has a strange encounter with a surprise visitor. Looking forlorn and having a cigarette, she hears the door rattle and pulls back the curtain, surveying outside, seeing a set of muddy footprints leading all the way up to the door, a shadowy figure visible on the side. And as suspected, her boy has miraculously returned home, Alicia mumbling that he appeared out of nowhere, and she made him his cereal just the way he likes, the boy looking admittedly quite dead, sitting motionless at the kitchen table, although the officers are certain that they saw him move. Jano takes a spoon and checks under his nose if he's breathing, Funes noting he smells like a rotten corpse. Well, yeah, I mean, I'd imagine. He asks if it was Alicia responsible for this, but he points out that his hands are all torn up, indicating that he must have been scratching at the dirt to get out of the ground for a few days, but still considers Alicia, knowing that some relatives unearth their loved ones' bodies, unable to stand the idea of them being gone. Funes thinks he seems hesitant, and he agrees, because he doesn't believe this to be one of those easily explainable cases. He's immediately proven correct. About to leave, they flip off the lights, hearing the sound of a milk glass hitting the floor, and turn them back on, seeing it's been spilled, also noticing his arm has changed positions from before. Jano knows the best course of action is to bury him again, Funes wondering if he's serious. He is, considering what might happen to Alicia if the body was left there, that she would probably wind up in a psychiatric facility before too long. He asks what he's supposed to tell his people, offering the cover-up of the movements being post-mortem spasms caused by accumulation of gas, perfectly normal for a decomposing body. He gets right up to the boy's body, asking him why did he decide to come visit us and what exactly brought you back. Morning approaches, seeing a woman taking pictures of Victor's house, the first time he meets Albrecht, and he is not only familiar but a fan of her work on the supernatural. It seems that she did finally respond to Walter's pleas, having been sent a piece of mail from the address. Yet oddly, when she presses the intercom button, she can hear someone picks up, but they never speak. Considering what's going on at Alicia's, he thinks that this must be more than a coincidence, and they join forces in their investigation into what is now becoming a neighborhood-sized problem. They are intending on moving the body, but are worried about too many people being around, so they will have to wait for now. Jano telling him to get some concrete too when reburying him, so the boy cannot escape his grave a second time, seeing more handprints going all the way up the wall. They then bring in Albrecht to see the body, and Jano has had similar odd experiences in his previous 15 years working in forensics, bringing up when a young man who was killed with 14 bullets in his head, leaving him no choice but to carve into his skull. 5 hours later, the young man grabbed his arm, opened his eyes, and looked at him. The same thing happened to an old man who had been dead for 2 whole days. Unfortunately, the family had to see this for themselves, just as with the boy now, asking to imagine what they felt, believing that this is what happens when we meddle with things not from this world. If we simply let things go and pay the dead less attention, they will go away. It's as though their own grief in some sense is what actually brought their dearly beloved back to life in some capacity. Another kid gets to see this strangeness when hopping the wall. He picks up toys and stuffs them into his backpack. Coming to the door, he he sees the body inside, which eerily slowly turns to face him. When they come back later, it looks like he left in a hurry, leaving his backpack full of stolen toys behind. He returns later and happens to catch them stuffing the body into a freezer, and films the whole thing on his phone. Funes returns, having sorted out things with the cemetery, and with Alicia sleeping, now is the time to move the boy. And when about to do so, they hear a child sobbing from within the freezer, followed by a loud slam, the gang realizing they're gonna have to take the whole dang thing with them. Back to interviewing Juan, this must now be occurring in the present. The trio now brought together, officially introducing Dr. Rosentalk and having him fill out some forms so they can stay in his house for a few days to investigate, noting that several other events have been occurring in the same area. Juan's confused by what this all means and what happened to Walter, but they don't have any answers other than no one has seen him in quite some time. He limply offers them good luck, feeling that they'll need it, seeing the team getting set up in each of the houses. Albrecht puts out a pretty sophisticated, ornate piece of equipment, while Rosentalk goes through another house with a blacklight. Funes is a little on edge with this whole evil business, asking what they're hoping to find. Only clues, Rosentalk assures him, but Funes is still worried, mentioning a medical condition he has related to coagulation, and he can't hear so well either. The doctor agreeing that this probably isn't a good place for him to be. Well, too late now, I suppose. Jano places bowls of water with compasses in them as Rosentalk and Funes continue searching the house, coming across silverware somehow miraculously clinging to a cabinet in the kitchen. Albrecht's device reacts, the pendulum going tight, and suddenly one of the pieces stabs through Rosentalk's hand, now stuck, both grunting and trying to pull it out. Hearing an odd noise, Rosentalk realizes that whatever is in the cabinet is sucking his blood. Funes gets his gun ready and they slowly open the door, the silverware then flying to the other side, allowing Rosentalk at least to get free, yanking the knife out. He calls Albrecht, letting her know they must be on the right path after that encounter. Other objects start sliding across the floor and walls, thinking they must be in its nest, instructing Funes to clean up the blood quickly. He gets to work mopping it up, but when hearing the sink gurgling, decides F this and backs out of the room, while the activity spreads to where Jano is. Objects starting to move in the water, and stemware subtly shaking on the shelf. Funes calls his friend to apologize and tells him he's out, thinking he is not cut out for this. He calms him down, telling him to relax and asks where he is. In the house, he yells back, asking where, he says in the kitchen. Jano noticing a guy in the window, but even though it should be right next to Funes, he can't see the figure. He shifts his vision past a part of the window and it disappears and reappears depending on which angle he views it from, then appearing right in front of him. Woo, Scott, you got me there. Albrecht pours some liquid into her machine and hears that telltale gurgling. She turns on the faucet, sending the pendulum leaning hard to one side, then approaching a large gash in the wall. Funes tells Rosentalk he's leaving, but he tells him they found it. He doesn't see anything, that is until changing his point of view, just as with Jano moments ago. Lifting up the tablecloth, he plainly sees feet underneath. And we see under the table at least two of these evil creature dudes, and one flips to face him, which is pretty frightening. Rosentalk smiles, darkness and light, two relatives sharing the same space and time. Funes is all, yeah, I'm out of here, dude, screaming into the street and breathing heavily, hearing his heartbeat getting rushed, which must be his condition. You know, weird, evil, bloodthirsty creatures from another dimension living under beds and stuff. It's a lot to take in. He crosses the street looking for his friend, seeing the window the creature appeared in is now shattered on the ground, hearing creaks coming from the credenza. He carefully opens the door, only seeing plates and nothing out of the ordinary in there. Then he hears a loud static sound ringing in his hearing aid. Now moaning and rattling thuds heard from inside the cabinet. Ripping at the side with his fingers, from this angle he sees Jano inside, eyes bleeding and screaming to get out of there. Meanwhile, Albrecht peers into the hole in the wall, thinking that Walter might be inside, and do see someone in there with what looks like glowing eyes. Funes storms in with bad news about Jano, her warning him not to believe everything that he sees tonight. She instructs him to wash his hands, as these beings like blood, and asks if he's used any tap water. She calls in to Rosentalk that they have to stop the investigation, as they're exposing themselves too much. While Funes is hopeful there is some kind of rational explanation for things, but she shakes her head, nah, not so much. Although there is a theory about what's going on. The idea of balanced coexisting dimensions, organized as segments in an orange, and that there is life in both dimensions. Water is used to transport these microscopic beings that can gather together to nest and reproduce, even within our own bodies. So now we know exactly what these things are all about. They're from another dimension that is stacked on top of our own, and only visible when looked at a certain way. It seems they've cracked their way into our our dimension via the hole in the wall, and actually these creatures manifest as tiny microscopic entities that attach onto our bodies. Like Walter, he drank the tainted water and now has become this weird living dead monster thing that sucks blood. However, they don't have a clue about what brings them here or why their behavior is so aggressive. He just wants to know how to stop it. No such luck, she laughs. And suddenly an arm emerges from the hole and violently grabs her, sending Funes into another attack, collapsing on the floor and wincing, his heart racing. The creature steps out of the wall, Funes paralyzed in place, and sees the hole in the wall is now much bigger. The thing, all covered in blood, crawls up his body, getting right up to his face. Rosenstock is the next target, still busy at the other house, the door starting to open behind him. And that's the last time we see him, so yeah, he's probably dead. Funes manages to calm down. He grabs his hearing aid, a table and chair starting to move by themselves, being dragged towards the hole or nest, which also must have been the activity that Albrecht's device was reacting to as well, being pulled towards the hole. And he barely gets a chance to take a breath backing into the kitchen until the blood-soaked creature is back, popping out of the sink, and where we know the tiny micro version of itself is born. Luckily, it disappears, and Alicia shows up to lend him a hand, Funes asking for her help to get to the hospital. Tears in her eyes, she sobs that he tried to convince her that it wasn't real, but someone saw him, and she saw the video too, meaning the one the kid recorded. She must have gotten a hold of that, upset that he wanted her to hide her baby, and covered his grave in concrete. He swears he did it for her, and she relents to take him to the hospital, seeing that she has exhumed her son's body sitting in the backseat of her car. So he's like, yeah, no thanks, fly covered dead boy, I'd rather drive myself, thank you. So what if I'm having a heart attack? Frighteningly, Albrecht's twisted and destroyed body comes out of the house, freaking the hell out of Funes, hightailing it out of there. Ooh, can't blame you for that. That part spooks me every time I watch it. He parks somewhere to take a breather, still feeling the effects of his frightening encounters, and starts getting a call over the walkie from another cop, Ernesto. Apparently, Funes has been gone for hours, and the station is now in total chaos, with even the mayor there. Sounds pretty serious. Alicia came looking for him earlier there and was acting crazy. It seems Ernesto was worried about Funes and went looking for him at Alicia's, where he is right now. Uh-oh. Funes gravely orders for him to get the hell out of there immediately, Ernesto saying that his friend is here. And since Jano was last seen bleeding out of his eyes, that's probably not a good thing, you know? And he finally complies, crackling in over the radio he's leaving. Funes takes a drag on a cigarette, probably not helping with the heart issues there, and is determined to put an end to this once and for all. He returns to the neighborhood, grabbing cans of gas out of the trunk, and approaches the house. He proceeds to pour out gas all over the floors, coming to the kid's door, seeing dirty prints on the handle. Slowly creaking open the door, the boy appears, him slamming the door back like, oh hell no. In another room, he finds that Alicia has tragically hanged herself. And why not? Goes ahead and pours gasoline all over her body too, continuing through the rest of the house and tossing what's left when he gets outside. He fumbles to get a match going, the dang wind keeps blowing it out, and tries one more time. This time, Jano blows it out with weird glowing bulbous eyes, assumedly what the creature looks like under its human guise. He fires at the gas, igniting it, and that's actually all we see of Funes' attempt to squelch the supernatural madness that has consumed the area, not quite knowing if he succeeded or not. As we catch up back with Juan in the hospital, now actually a year after the story's main events, with 3 more people there to meet him. They're investigating the case surrounding the group and Funes, asking if he remembers them. He says he did, as they offered proof behind the disappearance of his wife, but he does not actually remember their names. When it came to Funes, he remembers that he was partners with Alicia, and the last time that he saw him was at her son's funeral. According to one man, Guzman, he witnessed Funes setting houses on fire with people inside, and is now considered a fugitive, believing to be involved with his wife's death as well. Juan becomes concerned, pointing behind them, saying he came with you too, but they don't see anything there. He pushes back a photo of Rosenstock, indicating that this is who he's seeing, although his face is heavily burned. A chair moves by itself and is flung at the camera. And that's it, right? So in the end, it does sound like Funes managed to burn the house down as intended, but that didn't actually do much to stop the evil from spreading. Juan sees a burned Rosenstock, meaning that even though the house did burn down, he's still been turned into one of those evil interdimensional creatures. We don't know the fate of the other investigators, but it's safe to assume they all followed suit. As far as Funes, he is now missing and considered a suspect related to the mysterious death. deaths. There's an element throughout the story of kind of covering up what the truth is about the supernatural, and it seems like the same thing is going on with the captain. No one actually has any proof or evidence of all the supernatural stuff that went down, so as far as the cover story is concerned, he must be responsible for what happened. There's no other logical explanation, right? There's actually a lot still up in the air in the end, and I was glad to learn after doing some searching that there actually is a sequel in the works from the original writer-director, along with an English remake, which will most likely suck, and that's just the way it goes. The plan for the sequel is to pick up right at the moment at the end with the chair fling and start from there, and I'm excited and hopeful to see where they take the story next, as I honestly really kind of love this one. Hopefully Funes can figure out a way to stop that evil for good. That brings us to the conclusion of this ending explained on Terrified. And don't forget, before we go, you can send me requests for any TV shows or movies you'd like to see me explain by sending them my way on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you guys think of Terrified and its ending? What would you hope to see in a potential sequel? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix.